for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today. It is an ongoing continuation, a whole saga of my vagabond journey as the pilgrimage of Christ, I believe, and what I feel and I'm experiencing right now. As we've talked about, only our own personal experience of the Christ is actually real. It's a real connection to our soul and what our soul has been choosing and continues to choose so far. So my latest update for you, as my own journey, sharing it with absolutely everyone who's willing and ready to listen and receive from it as well on their own, has been about this moving journey. And each time a certain package of something was complete, there was this push to go onwards. And I simply lived in the state of knowing I simply have no other choice. It is what it is, right? So today, it's the last day of me being here. I'm sorry it's been loud. I'm not in nature. I'm here on the balcony. And it's raining. It's pouring raining. And I have to pack the whole house up and move and go back home. But not yet in my own home. But still, it's the next step. So I want to share with you my recent profound awakening. So as you know, every one of these moves has been actually a gradual journey of personal liberation and freedom at the physical level, because the work I've been doing before has been profoundly, some might say metaphysical or esoteric, or, it's like the ability of spirit to come into form. And as the spirit comes into form, it works on you becoming more and more Christed. So what I realized today through the biggest push and that resistance that came through was something I want to share with you all, because it's super major important, especially for the type of the soul being we know is the creator soul type. And creator soul beings are free souls. They're already sovereign souls who are assisting all of life in creation to step on this journey and the journey of Christ fulfillment, liberation, and embodiment. So I call them volunteer souls. You might know a different name. It doesn't matter, right? We're all on the same page. This is really a journey of divine equality. So sharing tidbits here and there of my personal journey, I think, has been profoundly transformational for me as well, because I do get to share with all of you, as well as participating in this, not so much as an isolated being, just as a volunteer soul in my own mission, but also creating a circle of light within all of our families, and one family of light as one. So this biggest transition shift as of the late has been about, as you know, my experiences through people learning about the patterns that are still holding the Christ captive instead of free, liberated, and open. So before, because I was so focused on my work, sharing everything, and busy bee all the time, I couldn't create the next cycle. So actually, I didn't realize at that time that my move would actually blindfoldedly trigger a set of events and occurrences that would gradually build the kind of pathway that was already created at the soul level for my own being, to create something that I've basically imprinted myself with at the conception point, or the point of my immaculate birth. So let me get to the point. Today when I woke up, already knowing we have to be moving again, and fully sure that this is the next step, but there was an insecurity there. Oh, it's not what I want. It's not the place, and it's small again. And it's again that same environment that was triggering for me, because, I love the nature there. But the environment was so triggering for me that sometimes I could lose it. I was getting, I kind of was like getting lost, not getting lost, but I was losing it, right? Sometimes it was that intense, because the environment, as beautiful as it is, it can be very restrictive. And so at the first set of that joy, okay, it's time to take the next step, there came a set of insecurities and disappointments and fears about, again, going somewhere where I don't even have my own room again, but it's a small packed place. And all this fear of, oh, I'm not going to have my sacred space. What am I going to do? How am I going to sleep normally? How am I going to, create a kind of life when the other isn't a burden and a distraction for me, and always they're in my way. You know, I need my freedom. I need my space. This is what we continue saying to ourselves, right? And so at first, yesterday, we had a profound transformation with the Christ for forgiveness because of what I shared in the previous video, you know, the last exchange with the person. And basically, I realized going back, I made a deep introspection journey, that every single one of these people, whatever their issues were, whatever their projections were, wherever they were in their consciousness, I had to internally overcome that instead of that triggering my own inner devil. And the response, you know, because sometimes we get upset and angry for being treated and mistreated and, you know, set upon that of failure and people using us or even abusing, it doesn't matter, right? So from the creation level, what I've shared in the previous video, to the physical level, this had to be all complete, but not for the others, not for other people. Like, we're doing this for others. That's a false assumption for all volunteer souls. And I want to get to the notion of why this is so and how this journey has to come back fully to ourselves. Okay, so the epiphany was because yesterday we did the clearing work and I didn't know how to release because I felt such burdensome energy. I couldn't sleep all night. I felt heavy energy after the, you know, the meeting we had here with the person, and it was very, very frustrating. And I felt this heavy weight falling on me, and I knew it was not coming from me. And as an empath and a very sensitive soul, it was always my turnaround point where I managed to neutralize that energy. And at that point, I just couldn't. I said to myself, we were sitting there in the meadow. We were actually picking hawthorn and wild prunes and things. And it was the only thing really keeping me in the moment, right? In that moment. And then we were sitting there at the meadow. And I'm just thinking, why can't I shift this? What do I do? And in that simple moment, the only thing for me that truly works is surrendering that to the Christ and saying, in this moment, I don't know how to do this. The personality, the body, the human self, the ego, whatever you call it, it can't. I don't feel I'm able to at this moment. Please help me, show me the way. Christ, please pour your infinite, unconditional love into all aspects of me that are still conditional. So this would be not, you know, unconditional love is not if someone is mistreating us or is acting the way they did or they do through separation. And then we say, well, we forgive them, now it's all fine. Let's just forget about it. It's not that. We are still aware. We're very discerning where people are. We know that we can change them. We know that what took place simply took place and there's no excuse, period. But the unconditional love means the unconditional acceptance of all penetrating environments, circumstances, the reality basically as it is on all levels. Everything must absolutely be neutralized through the love of Christ. It has to come back full circle. You have to return it. So this would mean whenever you have an experience, it has to be brought back into the Christ. And that's where the center of that beautiful unconditional space of acceptance, which is a natural territory for forgiveness anyway, this is where that can be found, and it's eternally always there. So for me, just instantly saying out that prayer and like handing it over to the divine caused the biggest breakthrough. And I knew that this is it because I started feeling different feelings about the situation and I no longer felt the heavy energy. That's when you can realize, and that's how you recognize Christ in action, Christ in motion, energy moving through the absolute resurrection component, right, of this experience. So today I woke up and it was another set of circumstances because I simply let go of this. First, we have to do clearing and forgiveness for what took place here, but not just here. Every one of the further experiences going way, way back and noticing the repetitive notions, right? The repetitive things, because I had to see clearly where am I still falling flat on the ground instead of realizing my mastery, okay? So when that was done and surrendered, I woke up today with the feeling, but still, why do I, with all of this work of transitioning and shifting, why do I have to still go into a smaller place and experience not feeling free and restricted in so many ways, even though it's my environment? I can't enjoy it. I mean, I have all these feelings like returning, restriction. I'm not going to be free. What I'm going to do? Not enough space. Feeling of lack and scarcity because of that. Not being able to be my fully wings wide open and expand itself. And in that instance, I asked the question, How do I know without a doubt, without signs or synchronicity, even though everything laid out for us perfectly, right? We're going to be also able to deposit all of our stuff in someone's basement, and it's good because it's just a transit place. So we don't have to unpack so many times, you know, with all of the stuff. And everything lined up, but I still had the feeling like I'm really resisting this. It's like, I don't want to go there. I just don't want to go into that place and in that apartment. No way. And in the moment when I asked the question, the answer came, and it came through me directly, and my mother got it from channel from Jesus. She's always in contact with his beautiful presence and radiance. And it was, you know, we already know that our soul growth usually comes where the biggest points of resistance are. And then in a moment I answered to myself, because I'm resisting it, it's the rightest thing of all. Because before I was always infatuated with the new place and a new idea, and you knew this and you knew that, but it came out to be a lesson, right? It came out something to be integrated, and it had to be journey brought back to wholeness and completion of becoming more in Christed. So what took place now was this idea that I'm not free, and tears started pouring. It was like a floodgate of tears opening up, because I knew absolutely without a doubt that even though I fear that so much, like it's going to be repetitive again, and the environment, which can be very restrictive, and the place, right, even smaller than before, but I realized even here it's a big place, and I felt squeezed in because, a long story, right, I couldn't be here, I couldn't breathe, right, with the allergic reactions and the place not being clean and the rooms being super cold, and we didn't get the heating, and so many problems actually. And even with the big places, there can be an experience where smallness is actually repeating and repetitive and being recreated. So I came deeper. We called in another guide who we call Lamayan. You know, he's a Pleiadian guide, a master. And we also asked him. And he said, even though I always say my heart is breaking for what you're experiencing, he says, I see your soul because we're basically family. And he says, your soul is the type of being that you know how to exit the earth realm. He says, you know exactly, but the soul will not allow, because your soul is so strong. It will not give up. It won't quit until you master this lesson that you've imprinted yourself with, which is actually, like Jesus also said, a feeling of total and utter unconditional freedom. Not having that freedom, but being it, becoming it ultimately, on all levels. And this was me getting to the nutshell of the problem, of the issue, of the core issue that I've been struggling with my entire life. So I came to the imprint, right? Because, you know, the Christ essence has many components, but I've been working on unconditional love, which is unconditional acceptance in the same level, right? And unconditional trust, right? Trusting yourself beyond anything, which is a source of wisdom, right? This is where it comes from. And then being in that powerful state of being, which is freedom. So in the past video, in the previous one, we've talked about that unconditional trust to yourself. In the even previous one, we've talked about unconditional love, loving someone when they don't love back, or loving the situation and loving yourself fully, coming back to the self. For any experience, there was no mistake, there was no wrongdoing. It was simply a choice for the self. And this last one, this total liberation of the body, feeling liberated and free, even if you have an illness or disease, or like Jesus said, even if you're shackled up in chains, you are that freedom. You can feel it in any space, any condition, in any environment. And I knew why my tears were so real and so heavy, because this was the most difficult one for me. Always has been. And now with the round journey sort of rounding up, becoming complete, coming back onto itself, it's like now we go into the deepest one, because the other ones I've done, check. That's why the experience was so fast forward, moving me onward. And now I realized, wow, this is it. This is where the core lies. And the moment I realized that, I've gotten even a deeper insight. I saw us as volunteer beings. And it's funny enough, because they told me that even volunteer souls have guides. So just like on Earth, I'm in a way a guide for other humans as well. Even in the light being realm, I'm a guide for many. So like people call celebrities, right? Like role models. So not really role models, but it's kind of people being up there on the stage playing out these more lives that are more seen for others, even though they're actually having their own hidden realities, as we all know. But at a certain point, they're acting as a role model. And now here, they told me it's the same, like as above, so below. That the same position I have here, I have in different terms in the light being realms. So they said you're also acting as an instigator and teacher for many light beings in training. And many light beings also came here on earth. That's why those volunteer souls always resonate with me and come to me and find me for some, and through some odd level of synchronicities, which is still difficult on this plane of being, because, you know, reality is being hoaxed and hijacked, and filters and modulations that, you know, continue to make our lives more difficult than they could be. But that's our trials. You know, this is where the mastery lies. And our content is being hidden and, you know, hidden with different algorithms and such. So these beings always somehow find me, right? And that's what they told me. And then I saw this vision of how, you know, when we come to earth, we often believe we were imprinted through the inception of darkness, and that the darkness is actually responsible for these patterns we have, and that the mind is actually basically an Anunnaki program, which in truth it is. But let me tell you, with most of the human souls who are still learning and they exist within the cycle of reincarnation, they are plugging into that Anunnaki reptilian-based mind a lot. You know, it's like predominant notion in their existence and their driving wheel in life. So for volunteer souls is different, because the driving wheel is themselves, because we are already liberated beings. We are sovereign beings who are teaching this sovereignty to others. But we're not teaching it directly, because no one can actually be taught that. But we're acting as instigators of change by liberating essences. And I've talked about this before, if you remember, in many of my videos, how our work is more essential. I work at the essence level, that there's beings who work at the archetypal level, and it's like building new foundations. But first it's like creating these breakthroughs, like points of breakthroughs, and I've called this many times before. So I've seen my soul basically descending consciously, which is what volunteer souls do. We're not a part of the reincarnation cycle, but we're conscious creators, and we consciously choose to jump into. So in a way, it's like being a fallen angel, except this is not a fall through darkness. It is a conscious fall, described as a descent into matter. And that imprint is that first point of your own personal design, which the soul chooses, through which the soul would absolutely say a first statement that is given, that will be lived throughout your human life. And my statement was, when I'm on earth, I'm not free. And darkness did not say that, but my soul has chosen to work with that specific patterning. So every volunteer soul would choose something different. And for me, it went all the way up to this core. And, you know, freedom has all the different levels have to be around it. But the first essentially is that freedom. That's why my crying and releasing was the most intense when I came to the biggest breaking point. And I knew with the greatest resistance will come also the greatest gift, if I can manage to relive that, re-experiencing now in a new way, which is super more conscious, and then break through it so that I can finally feel that mastery. When you are freedom, you're not searching for freedom anywhere. You're not moving for freedom, but your freedom inside, your freedom within creates movement in life. So my own imprinting that occurred through my own soul statement. So when my soul jumped into this realm, creation angel level it's being sung into being. That's what the song was being distorted on purpose, so that this distortion, once the human component, right, lives that through its spiraling experience, could one day through all these experiences remember their first, it's like first discord. And that discord, when it's lived through you, the only way of bringing that to the human realm is when it's being lived in the human realm. Hence the term volunteer soul, and why we need to come here in a physical experience. Sorry about the church. That's one of the reasons why I don't like being here, because the church is super loud. But it's kind of banging for a breakthrough today if you're looking at it like that. So when you witness your own creation, nothing outside of you will be seen as random anymore. Nothing will be done for you or out of spite or viciously. Not even darkness. Darkness plays a role because it creates the kind of setbacks that they're not very helpful, or they're kind of interfering in a way that we wouldn't remember soon enough. So we're kind of always being stumbled. Like I said, I'm kind of stumbling along the journey because of that, also because it's new, but mostly because there's a lot of miscreation there as well, and mischief, right? So you wouldn't come to a point of realization and remember, because in that remembrance there's such huge power. And in that power, through that power, you can activate the freedom within. And in that state, there's all this dormant potential of infinite life force. And for me, if I don't feel free in any level, in any way, my life force will be stifled. Hence, my growth is stifled. Hence, my creations, my creativity, which means also my funds, my money, my resources, because it's all different levels of representing what life force, creation, pure creation, raw creation energy is. So through being freedom, instead of searching a condition of freedom, a state of freedom, the being of freedom is tapping into that infinite reservoir of life force. It is the liberation of Christ. It is the liberty of all. And it is the freedom of Christ being. And it's the direct access to our mother spirit, which I've talked about before. I will continue to in its own time and space, when it feels right and when it's just and divinely ordained. But for now, let me just tell you that this infinite freedom within, being it, I am infinite freedom of life and life force expression, is the direct constant touch with the mother spirit within, which in my case is Aurea, which is my own creation angel being. And she is, like I always say, she's my spirit mother, and she's super badass. But when I'm in my inner child work, my human design work, I will have to go through experiences that don't feel very Aurea-like to me, right? So these are the initiation points of growth. So through learning about the weak spots, there's an opening, which is where resistance is. It's usually our weakest point. And this is where the soul has been choosing the greatest amount of work. Also, the soul of a volunteer soul, the volunteer soul will choose usually the most difficult, let me tell you, personality expressions. I'm not saying I'm a difficult personality, high maintenance sometimes, but it's because you're very articulate, very structured, and in that way they can be sometimes more burdensome for this work than someone who's more open and flexible and sometimes naive, like my mother's more like that. It's easier for her to do that for me because I'm more structured. And because you have more knowledge, sometimes that's a burden when it comes to shifting naturally, because the organic expression of the shift is at its optimal when we're the most surrendered, like an innocent child, right? So to tell you more about this, knowing that the soul will not leave before this is done sometimes could be a bit tongue-tied here, but it can be a little difficult. Because masters always tell me there are souls who leave before they finish, and that's normal. It's not like to be expected, it's difficult, but they are telling me I'm in a way stubborn in that way, persistent in my work, because I'm also training many light beings who will continue to come here to this realm. So out of that case, I'm acting almost like someone who's being watched all the time at the center stage. And my work of pioneering, that's what even my page was called since the dawn of time, was chosen to be so, even before coming here, as you know, Ascension Pioneer. So it's the kind of pioneering expression that wasn't present here before. So that's kind of like my gift to the world, not just to humans here and to other volunteer souls who are present on earth, but also those who are not, who are just in spirit now and are learning in order for their leap jump. So the more I pave the way, the more these light beings can also come. And there's only, what they're telling me, a few of us who have the kind of noble mission, noble quest, who work in both streams, and at the same time mostly bringing these points of liberation for Earth herself. So this is the way Gaia receives a learning as well, how she can liberate and how her life force can be liberated more and more as we're stepping onwards into a new expression of her and us and all of us as one family of divine love. So this has been quite a realization, and I'm still a bit of like, oof, and at the same time this was an answer. And you won't always know that, because sometimes people are afraid to take these deep jumps because they feel a lot of resistance, so they might falsely assume that's not the right course of action to take or the right choice to make, because what seems easier is often, well, it has less work here behind the scenes, but it never assures more growth. So for a volunteer soul, growth is always the most assured thing. So you wouldn't choose a life of leisure and enjoying, and especially my life wasn't like this. Never. Let me tell you that. It's like constant training, and my human self, my body gets tired, gets depleted, gets agitated, gets sad. It doesn't want to work like this all the time. But the soul, which I'm shown all the time, is neutral. It does not act in a way like, oh, I feel sorry for you, right? It's like your constant cheerleader. It's like, you are me. Don't forget, there's an infinite power of what I've chosen to do, and I wouldn't choose that if I wasn't able or capable of doing it. So there's 3 aspects they've been showing me today about choosing that and actually allowing that to work, and being assured and self-assured that you can do this and can walk this path, right, of breakthroughs, is being self-willed. So this, in my case, was a free will at the soul creation, soul level. It's different free will than a human free will design, but it was self-willed. And they told me infinite faith and infinite courage. These 3 aspects of constantly like bringing them into my awareness, and they're helping me with this work. And they're telling me this work is, it feels very personal now because it's less shared in the audience sector or working with people like I used to share content on Patreon. This is a different work now, but it's because it's deeper, it's more essential. And it's not, like I said, it's not something you're being paid for. You're simply paving the way, and there's no assurance. There's also no guarantee that once I do this, I'm going to have physical reassurance, or like physical, figuratively speaking, right? What you do within can manifest as an outward creation. It's not assured. The only thing that's assured is soul growth. So I have no assurance that, okay, once I do this and I'm able to be myself, complete Aurea, complete freedom, the power of my spirit and the heart of my soul all the time. Not just like when I feel conditions are right and when the Christ pours through or through prayer, but like all the time. Can you imagine? And this is what my soul wanted. Hence my life being so difficult and challenging. But imagine that. That in itself is that reward. But we often say, well, but I'm a human, but I also need a home, and I need stability, or I need a partner, or this set of rules or circumstances I belong to in the human realm. And even though I really resonate with that myself, I still am fully aware that there is no guarantee for me. Okay? So I don't know how this plays out for other beings, because we've all designed our journeys. So getting back to the mother spirit within is the way of truly remembering the primordial call, which it's not just a higher call, but on earth when you have work to do, like in our instance, volunteering work as a soul being who has offered like herself, I'm going to say her, as a sacrifice to life, just our lives being the greatest sacrifice, greatest gift and offering, is really something so beautifully unconditional. It's sometimes hard for the human to follow, but when you remember, there's absolute clarity, and it's much easier to do the work instead of just kicking in the blind, like kicking around blindfolded and being ignorant about it. So some of you perhaps who've had difficult lifetimes, had to always make difficult choices, and you didn't feel there was much justice in your life, or you've had paid dividends, it's simply because your work hasn't fully been completed yet. Like, you have to be really honest with yourself. I had to get really clear, because I could, as easily as anyone else on earth, fall into victimhood or victim mode, and having those stupid positive, negative, light, dark, like separation based kind of statements, like, if I'm not living this right now in my highest reality, I don't know how to manifest. In the volunteer soul realm, remember, this is volunteering, this is sacrifice work, this is selfless service. We're not here to learn how to manifest our greatest, highest reality. Some souls have come here for that. That's what they're talking about. That's their greatest interest in life. Not for us. For me, I'm not into that. I'm not interested how well I can manifest this and that, I'm interested in getting this work done that I've initiated myself with. It was a journey of self-initiation. Hence, it can only come back by knowing that. And as a human, having that understanding fully and being self-willed, self-taught, and then self-initiated. That was my journey and how it always was. And I also know, because this was a difficult, challenging time for me, so I kept needing more reassurance. And I've often asked my mother, because she channels these masters so beautifully many times in very simple terms. Nothing complex, just for us. Not like channeling what people channel, like generalization of stuff, but just for us and our path, right? That intimate connection we truly have, which is for me the only real reality, the only real touch and connection with these masters. Not what we read about them, or we hear about them, or someone else says, or someone else channels, but our own intimate life connection, which we've talked about in the previous video, the experience of Christ, right? It's what we're experiencing and internalizing within. And not in the mind. It's not something like an obsession. It's a real living thing. So I always needed this reassurance now, because it was very vulnerable as I had to undertake this step and these journeys, right? And now I'm feeling, when I'm done, when I'm complete with that, and everything comes back to me, when the Christ now returns to me, because I've been now returning all of my life experience into Christ, so that eventually I can pack it up enough, right? Like a donut, and then it expands back like outwardly, and then it comes back unto you. Like I've placed so much light codes into the place, 7 years right in my sacred place. And now, then I had to leave it behind, and then I'm coming back to it. So now with this most difficult part of becoming the ultimate gift of freedom, by being free in any state, condition, or term of life, or circumstance, right? Then the place can now also support me in that, because I've encoded it with all of my love, so that now this can come back and support me as I undertake this basically last, most challenging, most essential gift of service to myself and the world. Most difficult aspect, because let me tell you, I know this is the most challenging, because when I realize what I have to do, the first thing I say is, no, but that's something I can do. I know my personality. It will fight to the death. It won't surrender. It will have to have its freedom otherwise, because there was this imprint that the soul has created itself that stated, when I'm on earth, I'm not free. So I don't know how many of you know that, but even when I was born through umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. I was literally chained at birth. So I came to take my first breath, like, oh, I basically almost suffocated, and I was a blue baby already. So they saved me in the last few moments. So there was a feeling that I always have to struggle through life, and I have to earn my freedom and fight for my freedom because of that core pattern. So that patterning, it already created that in the womb. So in the womb, probably I had to spin a certain way to create this feeling of always being suffocated. And I always lived in small packed up environments, small villages now, small towns. I didn't move around a lot since now, right? Most of my life. But there was a feeling of smallness. If nothing else, it's a feeling of never meeting new people. It's always the same people who have this idea about you, and they're projecting, and there's this feeling of smallness. Like you can't break through and just be yourself, right? Because there's always something nagging you. And there was always this experience being recreated since birth, since that first wrapped around. And it's not karmic. I know there's many who study this. So this is karmic diagnosis. No, in my case, I know what it is. It was the first soul-chosen initiation, because that's what it wanted to uncoil from and totally gift itself with. Because only through that imprint, I could learn about all these different facets of myself, and I could expand, like breaking through them. Not already existing around them, not needing even to touch those aspects of life, but exist right in the middle of them, so that you could like break through like a rubber band, right? Like an elastic, and stretch through them. So that was the point. That was the indication and initiation of my own life in itself. And I see it now fully. The epiphany came, the realization came, and I only have to physically allow for the human self, for my physical body, my mind, my heart, all of it together, combined in the body, in this joint vessel, as a unity consciousness of the physical self, because we had the physical self, the soul, and the spirit, right? The triagram of the Ascended Masters, the I Am flame, right? So in that space, I have to allow the body now to illuminate the experience of the human, to come now, break through that original pattern and come back into the only true statement that freedom is who I am, and I am freedom. So that's my sharing, that's my work, that's my sacred gift. I will have now a work to do, again, settling myself, rooting myself back. It's a transit place again. But there's wisdom to it, and there's growth through it, and there will be an experience that I don't yet know about. But when I get my new internet, hopefully soon, I'm going to stay updated. I'm going to update you. And as always, I share when something comes through. I share when it's already crystallized, not before, not a moment sooner, and not a moment later. So thank you, everyone, for staying devotedly with me on the path and learning also from me, through me, as me. We're all one. And thank you for being here, really at the bottom of my heart. If you ever want to make an energetic expression of love and gratitude, like a donation or buy a course or anything, thank you so much, already in advance. But I always thank anyone specifically, personally as well. And there's work on Patreon that we've already seeded there. So thank you for joining. And as always, so much love, wisdom, and power. And I'll talk to you again soon.